to kind of, take it to the kind of the other thing on the agenda for today, talking about defining moments. It's just like you've just crafted this paper about defining moments that I really can't wait to publish, because it really touches on a lot of things. And for me, it reframed how to kind of look at these different experiences and how important, our point of view is employee experience drives customer experience and shareholder experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that paper really kind of reframed it in a new way for me by really kind of crystallizing what those defining moments are.
Yeah. And, I look forward to that paper going out, because I think it's going to be the first, signal, to the market that we're in the employee experience business. Mm-hmm. And, I want to be really clear about that, because we've been in employee experience for a long time, but we've spent, 80 or 90% of our resources supporting software vendors who sell employee experience solutions. And that's great. And we love doing that. But, we've been at the intersection of running our own business, of, participating in the employee experience market for, years and years and years. And also we advocate, for employee experience, concepts at the highest levels, tirelessly. And, the situation, and just to kind of ground, I want to talk about defining moments and what that means and everything, but the question is probably, why are we going to continue to help people and expand the amount of help that we provide them on employee experience? And it's a real simple thing. I had a realization during the pandemic, and I wasn't the only one, but I had a realization that a lot of the folks that we were working with in companies were burnt out. Meaning that we were working with clients who, were selling employee experience solutions, but their own employee experience was awful. And that had a very, specific and significant impact on the ability to get work done. And so work in those environments was, very slow because the energy reserves weren't there to take something from, start to end. And a lot of times, over the last couple of years, our work has taken us in the direction of enabling the teams to be able to actually execute on a lot of the work that we were doing together by focusing on some of the things that we learned from an organizational design and employee experience perspective, not only in our own company, but in, working with and advising a lot of other companies out there. And so, I think the big picture for me was, if our purpose is to create abundance, then we have to do it in, every, context that we have access to. And we know a lot about employee experience, and employee experience is really not well understood at all. And so a lot of the work that, we've been focused on over the past several months is creating a model that people can actually use and implement for employee experience that takes advantage of all these great, software solutions out there, and a lot of the great other services organizations and other concepts that people plug into but don't know what to do with them when they have them. And so I think when, this paper goes out, I think it's really going to be one of the first workable employee experience models where people are going to walk away and say, okay, I've got a few simple steps that I can focus on, and I understand employee experience in a more significant way now. So I'm pretty excited about it. Did I say anything wrong there?
No, I mean, I think you really kind of crystallized it, quite well. I think that for me, one of the things that really kind of like brought it all together was, this is going to sound kind of funny, because in going through your paper, and you're recounting a story about this epic road trip that you took, and a lot of the things that were memorable about the road trip were not the things that you would ever set out to do, the car breaking down or getting lost or those kind of things, basically when things go wrong. But one of the things that really kind of brought it all together for me was, over the weekend, I went to a funeral for the father of one of my best friends. And her dad was a prominent local minister in the town that he lived in. And the funeral was as a lot of times you say, oh, it's going to be a celebration of life, and it can be really sad. This actually was a celebration of a person who touched a lot of people's lives in positive ways. But what really struck me in the people giving the eulogies and the things that were brought up, kind of like before and after, were the stories about, really the human moments in this person's life, both in things that went well and things that didn't go well. And a lot of times it's those when things don't go according to plan is when you really kind of find out, I think for a company, what your culture is made of and what your people are made of, and creating that employee experience that really is sort of a reinforcing mechanism to, in my mind, kind of maintain what is great about culture, gives employees the tools they need to be great when those things go sideways, when those things don't work out, that your people have the mettle that they need to be the thing your customers need and deliver value for shareholders ultimately, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree. But let's break it down a little bit. So first of all, a definition for employee experience is pretty elusive. And I think it's because people don't understand what employee experience actually is.
Right.
Or how to control the parts that you can, because there are parts that you can't control except for your response to it. Right. And so, man, I've been poring over this stuff for like 6 months or more. And the definitions of employee experience, they just really piss me off, frankly, because there's a bunch of words and the words don't really mean anything in terms of like what you're supposed to do. And then there's, we've talked about the confusion between, employee experience and employee engagement and, all the different, kind of parts of employee experience. And, is employee experience an evolution of employee engagement? Well, that's a market view of it, but that's not, really what it is. And so, we offer a very simple definition, which is, basically employee experience is the perception of the quality of time that people had with a company. That's it. It's like Ogilvy would say that your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Right. It's really that simple. It's just, okay, looking back over the past day, the past week, the past year, the past 5 years, do I have an overall positive perception or an overall negative perception of the quality of time that I spent with a company? That's all employee experience is. The missing link is that if you accept, just kind of that broad general definition of employee experience is, okay, but what does it mean in terms of how do I do anything about it? Like, I want to create a great employee experience. Which when people say that, what they're really saying is, I want people to think that the time that they spent with our company is well spent time, that it's high quality and that they had a great experience. Yeah. And that has a lot of manifestations, like the reviews that are left on Glassdoor or the stories that are told over drinks, over one too many drinks, about what it's like to work with a company, et cetera. But, that's really all employee experience is. But, we took a page out of the customer experience book in order to define the domains of employee experience. And I think this is one of the reasons why people get confused about employee experience, because people tend to, really locate employee experience within one component of what the actual employee experience is. So in customer experience, we learned this a long time ago. There's different subdomains. If you just think, customer experience is a domain of experience. And so if the domains of experience are employee experience, customer experience, and shareholder experience, that's the ecosystem, right? And, if you're doing it right, it should all contribute to the social good. It should flow from social good and deliver value to the social good as a purpose-led organization. But those are the three primary domains of experience that any company is going to encounter. And customer experience is really straightforward. It breaks down to subdomains. The subdomains are brand experience, marketing experience, sales experience, product experience, and customer success. Those 5 things. We've known that for a long time.
Right.
If we brought any innovation to that model, it was probably differentiating between brand experience and marketing experience, where, marketing experience is the stuff that you do to, connect with people and drive leads, marketing campaigns, email campaigns, the stuff where you're actively, in a relationship with someone. The brand experience is all the stuff that, kind of floats out there in the universe, that's not necessarily attached to an email address or, a mobile phone or whatever. So it's, kind of more brand oriented than marketing oriented. And, that distinction has, often been blurred at different periods of the market, but we distinguish between those two. When you look at that from an employee experience perspective, and God, for 2 decades, we've been in this like confusing trap of, yes, HR is just like marketing. It really is. Yeah. It's just like marketing. And I could go on and on about that, but, the parallels in, an experience model are obvious. In, CX, you have the brand experience. In EX, you have the employer brand. Right. It's what people think the experience of working for your business might be like. In CX, you have the marketing experience. In EX, you have the recruitment marketing experience. So these are your job posts, the emails that get sent, the marketing of open positions to try to bring people into the sales cycle, right? So right. In CX, we go from the marketing experience to the sales experience. In EX, we go from the recruitment marketing experience to the candidate experience, which if that's not a sales job in the tightest labor market in history, then you're missing the point, right? Because you're selling something, right? And hopefully what you're selling is what you promised in your employer brand and in the recruitment marketing component. And that's all, there's no breaks in continuity there. And then I think one of the real innovations that we're bringing to the understanding of employee experience, besides the fact that employee experience is a domain with multiple subdomains, is that we actually split the part that people often refer to as the employee experience. And we split that into work experience and employee success. So work experience is analogous to product experience under CX, and employee success is analogous to customer success. And so those 5 domains of employee experience in our model, again, are employer brand, recruitment marketing, candidate experience, work experience, and employee success. And the difference between work experience is it's about the work, right. So that's where performance management lives. That's where your workflow tools live. That's where everything that's actually about touching the work lives. And then employee success, very similar to customer success, are all the things that are provided to support success in the work experience. And so when I think about things like well-being or, recognition, or, helping people develop their career path, that's not specifically about the work. That is about an employee's success in the company and in the environment that you're in. So we distinguish between those two. And so if you want to have a great employee experience, you want to have as many great subdomains of the employee experience as possible. You want to have a great employer brand. You want to do a great job with recruitment marketing. You want to do a great job with the candidate experience, with the work experience, and with employee success. But what does doing a great job mean? It means that you have created moments within each of those experiences that are doing the hard work of carrying your purpose into the employee experience. So they should all be rooted in what your purpose is. So does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
We've talked about this stuff so much that I don't know what layer of abstraction I'm jumping in anymore.
No, it totally makes sense. But I think that it's still kind of an unfolding idea in the market, and that people are still having to kind of wrap their heads around it. There's a lot of stuff that's just kind of like now falling into place for me and other people on our team. But I think that just kind of where the market is right now is still very much early days in understanding and implementing all of these various experiences within a company to try to create a holistic point of view. And I think that based on kind of what I see going on in the market right now, I don't think that there is a unifying theory yet that really is bringing everything together. And I think there's a lot of companies out there that are pursuing employee experience as if it's a standalone thing.
That's right.
That doesn't intersect with CX or SX.
Yeah, and not only that, but employee experience, has boundaries.
Right.
In most of the current, it's only about people working at the company, and whether they're burning out or whether they're whatever, and that's just a small part of employee experience. A lot of people I've talked to about this on the HR side, initially get overwhelmed They're already overwhelmed
Yeah.
with the idea of creating a great employee experience, but now they're like, great. So that means we have to create a great employer brand, create a great recruitment marketing experience, a great candidate experience, a great work experience, and provide on employee success. I already can't do all the stuff that I need to do. And you've just expanded the universe. And, the good news is the research is pretty conclusive on this. So, you brought up the story of my RV trip, which still today is one of the greatest trips that I've ever taken. But it's a good story because it highlights the way the human brain works. And the way the human brain works is that we cannot remember every moment that we experience in life. And so the human brain, takes all these moments and puts them into a file folder that is an experience. So that RV trip I was on was an experience, and it was comprised of, many moments happening every second, every minute. But we can't remember all those. So we file them, and then we identify the most significant moments, and we use those to help us make future decisions. So would I go on an RV trip again? Well, because I had a great experience, the answer is instantaneously yes. And I don't have to think day by day, minute by minute. I don't have to record all that stuff in my brain. And so the question is, how does something get tagged as positive versus being tagged as negative? And the research is pretty conclusive. The most memorable moments from any experience tend to fall into patterns. There's the beginning, there's the end. Those are transition moments, and you always have to pay special attention to transition moments. But then there is some kind of peak moment that occurs. That peak moment could be, a really, really great moment, or it could be kind of like a valley moment, like a really bad moment. A lot of this stuff, by the way, a jumping off point for my research was a book called The Power of Moments, which is a great book, and I, strongly recommend it. But in those peak moments or those really low moments, you do have the ability to define those. And so if we know that basically people's perception of the quality of their time spent with a company comes down to a few significant moments, you don't and can't control every single moment that occurs. Going back to my RV trip, the RV literally caught on fire. It caught on fire. We were going down. I didn't really know how to drive an RV. I can't believe these RV rentals that they just let people like me just jump in this, 70,000 foot vehicle and drive down the road, because it's ridiculous. But I was going down a mountain. I was riding the brakes too hard, and I caught the thing on fire. So, everybody, there's lots of smoke inside. People were crying. It was terrible. We were on the side of the road. Fortunately, a nice citizen pulled over and asked me if I'd ever driven an RV. And I said, absolutely, for the last 5 days. And he taught me how to use like an engine brake and stuff like that. And he's like, and don't worry about that fire stuff. It's like the smoke will clear out soon. You're going to be fine. It's just the brake pads need to cool off, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, sounds good to me. Back on the road. Cracked the windshield, the only thing that wasn't insured. Bonnie rolled out of the top bunk bed one night and like bruised her back on the stairs going up to the little ladder going up to the bunk bed. We almost got killed by mosquitoes and sweltering heat in the Everglades. I mean, all these terrible fucking things happened. But the things that I remember, the defining moment for me on that trip was my birthday. And my wife made me a lopsided cake in the tiny oven in the RV, and my kids sat around the table and sang to me, and it was the most beautiful moment I've ever had on my birthday. And I'm not a guy who likes to celebrate my birthday. And there were other great moments as well, but looking back on it, it's always the big moments that stand out. And that's the way it is with all these subdomains of experience. You don't have to control every single moment. You have to discover what the defining moments are currently, good and bad, in that experience, and then really invest your time in those.
Right.
And if you can, break the script, it's like we have these scripts, right? It's like you go to the restaurant, you're going to eat, you walk up to the host stand. They say it'll be 15 minutes if you're in Fort Worth. It'll be 2 hours if you're in LA. Someone takes you to the table, somebody comes and gets your drink order, and this is all part of the script, right? And we don't really pay attention to the moment unless something breaks in the script. But we can use that script breaking, effort to actually, invest these defining moments in the candidate experience or the work experience or employee success with elevated moments that are invested with intent and invested with purpose. And so it ought to be, an incredibly liberating notion.
Right.
For people who are responsible for the employee experience to understand they don't have to control every aspect of these subdomains. They just need to pick the most important moments and make sure that they have elevated those to the point of really creating a significant connection with people, and hopefully, centered on the purpose of the organization.
Yeah, and I think well said. And I guess if there's a theme that's kind of in both of the topics that we've covered today, is you can't control every aspect of either content development or employee experience. It's just like we live in a very chaotic, high velocity world, and that's okay. It's where are you going to focus your efforts to create something memorable? And so I think that, some of this is understanding what parts you can control. And then part of it is understanding what you really need to let go of.
Yeah. So what do we need to let go of in the employee experience?
Nobody
wants to let go of anything, right? What should we let go of?
I think that it is, we're seeing this play out in real time around us, where it's just like, you've got to have trust in people. It's just like there are so many employers who are just like, I need to get my employees back to the office, because if I don't see the work getting done, it's not getting done. And it's just
let it go.
And that's probably item number one on the let it go list right now.
Yeah. Make like Elsa, let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't fucking make people go back to the office if they don't want to.
Right. Because it's just like a lot of what is driving that are things that don't have anything to do with your customer experience, your product experience, any of that, then how you're driving value.
Yeah. I've got a very, specific example that's not as big as that one. That's a big point. It's like, come on, if you're forcing people back into the office, what you're really forcing them to do is find another job. Right. If they don't want to come back, they're going to find another job.
Right.
50%, over 50% turnover across industries in 2021. Great resignation, blah, 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 blah. No, everyone's powerless. We can't fix it. It's like, the dynamics have changed. Tightest labor market in history. People are different. These young people, they're not loyal, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But, employee experience is a sales job. And the first rule of sales is sell people what they want to buy. And what people want to buy right now is a job with the flexibility to be a fucking adult. And if they want to work from home, work from home. No big deal.
Right.
I know that doesn't apply to all contexts, but it certainly does in most of the contexts that we're exposed to. I've got a very specific example. I'm doing this podcast series, Long Strange Trip, talking to people about their experience during the pandemic and especially their work experience. And have you spent any time with Tate, one of our newest employees, Tate?
A little bit. Yeah.
She's cool.
Yeah, she's very cool.
And so, I was talking to her, and she said she was sitting on 4 job offers in addition, and waiting for ours, right? And, we have almost 100% acceptance rate, if I haven't said that enough, on every podcast for our jobs. We've lost only 2 people in the last 3 years as we approach 100 employees. So our turnover is virtually 0. And we don't focus on every moment of the employee experience to drive these results. And a great example is, Tate said, well, one thing that you could really work, because I was asking her what the most memorable moments were in her hiring experience. And they were all great, but I asked for any advice. And the advice that she gave me was, well, it did take a long time. And I was sitting on 4 offers, and it took like, almost a month to get an offer from the because we have a very rigorous hiring process, right? Is that something we should fix? And, I don't think it is. Sorry, Tate. I don't think it is, because it's working just fine. Yeah. People are sitting on job offers to get one from us. And so if we started moving in the direction of basically trying to make the shortest, hiring experience possible, it might work counter to our goals and just becomes, this thing where, what would we have to cut? The group interview, the hiring leader interview, the skills test, the assessment, the one-way video interview. I mean, there's like 44 moments in our hiring experience. And in order to get it down to a 2-week experience, we'd have to cut something. And all those things are significant to the things that we care about most. And so that's one of those that for right now, we're saying, that might actually be creating a bad experience for people, but it's okay. Because everyone that I've asked who's gone through the hiring experience, whether they were offered the job or not, said it was one of the best hiring experiences they ever went through.
Right. And I think that comes down to communication, where it's just like, one thing that we've been very intentional about throughout the hiring process is at every step of the way, you're getting a communication about here's what's happening, here's what's going to happen next. if, you're a candidate and you don't make it to the next round, you're getting a communication about that. And it's just trying to create a more human, respectful candidate experience, because a lot of times it's just like you apply for a job, you don't hear anything. And, and it's just like that's, certainly there is a lot of conversation now going on about candidate experience, has been for a while, but I think that people are kind of getting religion about it. But if you start, typically what I find is that if you start trying to truncate the hiring process and get really obsessing about time to fill, you're probably cutting out that communication process. Like, oh, we don't really have to do that, or making it less personal, or making it's on the road to becoming non-existent. So
you brought up my favorite topic, surrogation. So this is what happens when something becomes dominated by metrics. You have a strategy. Simply put, your strategy is to hire the best people. And then you have all these metrics, time to fill, quality of hire, all this stuff that becomes a dashboard. And then people start, kind of pushing all the buttons on the dashboard saying, we need to make this number better, this number better, this number better. And eventually the metrics become the strategy. The strategy itself is forgotten. And so you're in a surrogation trap. The metrics become surrogates for the strategy, and then the strategy is diminished over time. And so time to fill, for instance, which everyone feels is like critical, right? Because of 50% turnover. What if you fixed your fucking employee experience so that you didn't have 50% turnover? It could take more time hiring people.
Right.
And by the way, to fix that part of it, or any part of it, you don't have to fix everything. You just have to find the really awful moments and fix those. And then find the good moments that people remember the most and turn those into defining moments that really invest your people and the process with intent and with a purpose behind your organization.
What would you say is in your mind, the defining moment in sort of our hiring process?
Well, I asked and see, so how do you do this?
Yeah.
How do you do this, one might ask? Well, you don't just decide that, to me, you know what I thought it was? I thought that what most people were going to remember was the one-way interview, because I'd loved, they
were good.
It's confirmation bias though, because I, built like the first video interview, process and all that stuff. And it's really strange because people get this email and they're like, you have to record your answers to these 6 questions. And you can do multiple takes and all that stuff, but no one's going to be interviewing you. It's a one-way video interview. And, it's a very strange experience. A lot of, I highly recommend it, by the way.
Yeah.
But that's what I thought was going to be one of the defining moments. And, in my mind, it was like, okay, if we follow our own guidance, then we would want to invest that moment. We'd want to figure out a way to elevate it, invest people with a sense of pride and achievement, in that particular moment. But a funny thing happens when you actually go out and do the research and ask people, what did you remember most from the hiring experience? Was it good? Was it bad? And 2 things, I've talked to about 10 people now, and 2 things that they remember the most, and it's been consistent across the board. Number 1 is our cognitive assessment. And number 2 is the group interview.
Really?
Okay, so those are the 2 defining moments. Those 2 moments define the experience that people have with our hiring experience, right? So that's the candidate experience. And it's overwhelmingly positive, right? And so have you taken the cognitive ability assessment?
Yes, I have.
I
couldn't get a job at this company.
Nor could I. But what people don't understand, we're not really I shouldn't say this out loud, but we're not really looking at the scores. We're looking at people's reactions to it.
Yeah.
Because what we care about is a strong internal locus of control, and we care about situational awareness. Those are 2 of the primary things that we're looking for in our hiring experience. So people who feel like they have control over, the good things and bad things in their life, and people who can tell what's going on and project into the future about what's going to happen if it keeps going that way. So that's what we're looking for. And so, so just to describe this assessment, we don't do the, like the old school, kind of cognitive assessments like Wonderlic and, stuff like that, which are great for certain contexts. Yeah. For our hiring experience, we were looking to break the script. Right. So we want that assessment, but we don't want the typical assessment that everyone takes. So we did a lot of research and we found this interactive assessment that's basically like playing games and stuff. And one of them that everyone talks about is the math bubble game, where it's just throwing, equations at you in these bubbles, and you have to like pop the bubble by getting it. It kind of reminds me of my first grader's reflex math app that he has to do every night, because it's just games about math.
Yeah.
But the bubbles start to increase in speed, and you're like going around trying to pop all these bubbles with answers to the equations, and it becomes incredibly stressful, like, any kind of video game of that style. And no one really does great on it. No one really does great on it. But, we've had so many people afterwards, when they complete the assessment, they just know they fucked it up. They just know that they did terrible in the assessment, and they start reaching out preemptively. And they're like, when you see my score, know that my computer crashed, my dog was barking, this was happening, et cetera, et cetera. And we're like, external locus of control, blaming, everything but, yourself, when there's really nothing to, they haven't even seen the score yet. They just know they didn't do. No one does well on it. No one. It's too fucking hard. But, the other people, they just don't say anything, and they don't really ask about their scores or anything like that. They do, once they get an offer and all that stuff. But it's just funny because everyone remembers that moment because it's unlike anything that they've ever done in the process. Mm-hmm. And so based on our model, what we would do is take that and seek to elevate it even further and break the script even further. And I could tell you this, and rightfully so, people who get hired at the Star Conspiracy know that they earned it and feel that they earned it because of the moments that we focus on going through the hiring experience. It's tough. And I wouldn't get hired. So, that's a really specific example of you ask. So if you are wanting to, you need to focus eventually on all the subdomains of employee experience. But if you feel like the pain that most people feel right now, most people want to focus on their employer brand. Our Glassdoor scores suck. Or they want to focus on recruitment marketing. We don't know where to post jobs. We're not getting enough applicants. Or they want to focus on the candidate experience because people are either not accepting their offers, or they are accepting the offers and not showing up to the first day of work.
Yeah.
They're just no call, no show, no calls, no call, no show, as we say in the restaurant industry. And so they want to focus on, that part of it. What they are missing is an understanding of what the moments are adding up to.
Right.
And all they really need to do is go out and interview or survey, primary, secondary, quantitative, qualitative, bring as much research to bear as you can with the goal of identifying what the most memorable and impactful moments are in that process that are leading to the negative outcome. Or a positive outcome that you want more of, and then really drill down on, kind of breaking the script in those moments. I think I lost my train of thought. Was I trying to say something else? I hope you were listening.
What? Were you saying something?
I hope you were What?
Did you say something?
God damn it, Steve. I don't know what I said.
No.
I backed out there for a minute.
No, don't worry. It was brilliant.
Oh, good.
It was brilliant.
Thank God.
But I think that I think we've given a lot of kind of glimpses behind the curtain about the hiring process, and it's not. I don't think it was to say, "Oh, look how great we are." I think it's like, look, if we can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
It's just like you just have to figure out, what is your jam? What is the thing that works for you in your organization? It's just like we've been doing this for a while. It's taken us a while to kind of dial in these things, but we've now got a pretty good sample size since we've hired so many people. And at the end of the day, it's just like, are you hiring good people who can do great work, and do they stay with you? And so It's just like we've undoubtedly hired great people who are very talented, and retention's been key. So it's just like, for us, it's just like those are really the only metrics we need. We don't need a dashboard to tell us that, oh yeah, we're on track. It's just like you can see it and you can feel it. So
yeah. Can you stay on for a few more minutes, or you got to go?
No, I can stay on.
Tell me, what was the worst job interview you ever had? Do you remember the worst job interview you ever had?
Worst job interview, apart from the one where you interviewed me for this job? No, I'm kidding.
You mean that wasn't an interview? I think we were just drinking.
Yeah, that's exactly what that was. No, worst job interview was probably I got a job when I was in college, believe it or not, as a security guard at an office building in downtown Austin. Mm-hmm. And you want to talk about someone who is absolutely not security guard material? This guy. And so, like having to go in for an interview, the guys at the other end of the desk is wearing a uniform, got a little tin badge on and all this. And it's just like, they just needed warm bodies. It's just like, have you ever been arrested? No. Okay, you're hired. And so it was incredibly stressful, but ultimately it got me a job that allowed me to work in air conditioning during an Austin summer. So there you go. And you?
My worst interview, it was the only, humble brag here. It's not even a humble brag, and I'm not even really bragging. I'm just pointing this out so that people understand the context. I've never interviewed for a job I didn't get. Now, I stopped interviewing for jobs a long time ago, but I've never interviewed for a job I didn't get, except for one. And that was with a company called Trilogy Software.
Oh, yeah. I know where this is going. Software. I've heard this story.
Fucking Trilogy, man. And so they only hired, at the time, there was two ways to get into Trilogy, which was like the big software company that everyone wanted to work for in Austin, Texas. And so you either had to graduate from Stanford. God, I fucking hate the story, even as I'm telling it. You either had to graduate from Stanford and become part of Trilogy University, which was a cohort of new, mostly bros from Stanford, that would go through like say a 12-week training program together. And then they would find the right job for you based on, what they learned about you in the training program. I don't have a problem with a cohort or, a great, long onboarding process or whatever. I just have a real problem with this notion that you have to be a Stanford, graduate, et cetera. The other is, you just had some anomalous talent or industry expertise or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so I fit into the second category because I had a pretty good, at the time, reputation for the growing field of new media, which is what we now call digital marketing.
Right.
So, mysterious things like websites and, banner advertising and email marketing, that sort of thing. So, Trilogy is famous for having a washout interview process. And so they literally bust your balls the entire time during the interview. You meet with like 5 different people. It's very tightly scripted. They give you these silly riddles. How many steps would it take you to identify the mass of this sphere compared to that sphere if you couldn't weigh them? And then there was all these tricks in the process, like a group interview where they have you sit in a beanbag and everyone else sits in really high chairs around you to interview you. And what you come to find out is that they do that to see how you react to uncomfortable situations. And I went through all of that humiliation, and I knew that felt wrong the entire time. Not sure that I would have accepted the job anyway, but I didn't get the offer. And the reason that I didn't get the offer, I had a friend who was, really pulling for me there. And he said that I came across as too counterculture for them. And it's because I asked questions during the interview, like, why are you making me do this? I mean, this doesn't make sense to like the job that I'm going to be doing or, whatever. Can I sit in a different chair? I'm uncomfortable in this beanbag. I would like to be sitting in the same chair as everyone else. And apparently that's a big no-no because you're just supposed to sit there and, take the shit while they shovel it at you, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a point to the story, I promise, which is this. There was no purpose invested in their interview process. There was no intent other than to wash people out and create a rigorous hiring process by name only.
Right.
Like they just wanted to create a tough hiring process.
Right.
And they wanted like a fraternity to play games and haze people. Right. That's all it was. If there had been like some purpose invested in what they were doing, I could see having a very complex hiring process that, uses things like, brain teasers and stuff like that for a cognitive assessment, perspective. But when you're just being kind of plain mean or where you've built up a culture around, a hiring experience that's supposed to be a certain way because that's just the way it's always been, you start to sound a lot like a fraternity. Mm-hmm. And you start to look a lot like a fraternity as well. So that was my worst hiring experience. And that one would be easy to fix. Trilogy, if you're listening, if you're still around, I've blocked you from my URLs. But if you're still around and you need some help with your hiring experience, just let us know. Not really. I wouldn't help you. I do hold grudges.
Well, I mean, the whole, hiring world has changed since the 1990s. It's just like, back then it was, we came into the workforce the same way. It was just a very different time, and the dynamics were very much in favor of the employer, and that's all flipped around now. It's, there's not enough skilled talent to go around, and, employers are competing for it. And if you're designing your hiring process around archaic metrics like where did you graduate from college, basically, which becomes are you like me? Did you go to my university of choice and did you do the things that I did? And it's just like those don't have, anything to do with whether or not you're going to be successful in that role. And, the whole balance of power has shifted, and that's probably a good thing. It's created, hopefully, some more humanity in the workplace.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it's probably only a moment, right? And, it's, I think people are going to respond to the, shift in power dynamic because they feel they need to from a business strategy perspective. But inevitably, there's going to be a downturn. Inevitably, there's going to be, something that happens in the future where the labor market's not going to be as tight. And then it'll be interesting to see what people revert to. That's if there was, a point to close on, I would say that there are some things that should be persistent and consistent in an organization, whether the labor market is tight or not. And most of those come down to just how you treat people.
Yeah.
And you don't have license to treat people poorly just because you have the pick of the litter when it comes to hiring folks because the labor market's not tight. You feel the squeeze when the labor market gets tight and suddenly you want to be all nice and everything. That's cool. We wish everyone would move in that direction. But when the dynamic changes again, just hold on to that because the companies who are struggling right now are the ones who just weren't good to people. They weren't good to people when they didn't have to be. And, that's, I think if there's anything that defines like, our purpose as an organization and investing deeply in creating abundance for others, it's that creating a great employee experience, creating an abundant employee experience is not a means to an end.
Right.
You don't do it so that shareholders make more money. You don't do it to meet, the business, need of the day. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And yes, it does have many benefits associated with it. But if you pursue it because of the benefits, then when it's not necessary anymore, because you can hire as many people as you want and get, the best talent or whatever, people tend to stop doing it. So, nobody likes to hear it, but sometimes there's just a right thing to do. And the right thing to do should be persistent and consistent because the business environment's always going to change. And the only thing you can fall back on is your relationships.
Period. I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Well said.
Sounds good to me. Sorry to keep you into quiet time. Did quiet time start?
I don't know. Maybe it did.
No. No, today's we've got the office hours. So keeping out office hours.
No,
anyway, we should explain our day structure to people one day.
Yeah, we'll put that on the agenda for next week.
Well, it's good talking to you, Steve.
Good talking to you as always. Happy Monday. Hope you have a great rest of your week. And let's do it again next week.
See you next week.